you all. So before we get started with maybe just a little bit of teaching around like what mindfulness is and how it can support us in recovery, I wondered if we could maybe start with just a simple grounding meditation for a few minutes before we get into the talk. I know it's, for many of us, watching the news today, it's been a little bit bumpy. So maybe we can have a, just some grounding to kind of let ourselves kind of arrive in this virtual room that we're all in. Only be a few minutes. And if you haven't meditated before, that's fine. Don't worry about it. It's pretty simple. All you got to do is kind of sit in a way that's upright, but not uptight. That was a description for me that I learned, which I really like. All you need to do is, if you're comfortable closing your eyes, I suggest that. And if you're not, just pick a point in front of you and focus on it. And what I'm going to do is just talk you through everything. So all you got to do is just kind of go for a ride. So if I can invite everyone just to allow their eyes to close if they're comfortable doing so. Maybe start with a nice deep breath, or a few. Just feeling the breath go in and out. And let's just begin to arrive in the body, letting go of maybe what's happened today or what didn't happen today or what is still supposed to happen today. Let all that go for now and bring attention to the body that you inhabit, this home. So noticing just like how the body's landed in the seat or the chair or the place that you're at right now. So noticing the feet on the floor, whether the hands are touching each other. Maybe briefly scanning the body, softening around muscles. So for example, the muscles in the face. Just allow the jaw to soften, eyebrows, making sure the shoulders are dangling off the neck. They're not all bunched up. And then what else do you notice in this moment? Just get curious, right? Skin temperature. Maybe there's hunger in the body. We're simply neutrally looking and observing. And now we're all sitting relatively quietly, but there's a lot of movement happening in the body, right? There's these waves of the breath that keep coming and going. So see if for a moment or two, you can just rest your attention on the breath. Whether it's the tip of the nose or maybe the belly rising and falling. Just see if you can catch a few waves of that, just bringing your gentle attention to the physical sensation of the breath. Just breathing in and breathing out. The mind's going to drift off, and just keep inviting it back to the breath. Okay. And then bring attention back again to the body. Maybe noticing if there's been any shifts in the felt sense of the body, like what the body's really feeling right now. And then when you're ready, gently blinking the eyes open. You can blink them a couple times as you open your eyes, and starting to bring attention back into the room that you're in, and then also this virtual room that we find ourselves in together here. Okay. All right. Well, let's get into it a little bit. Let's talk a bit about what this thing is called mindfulness and how it can be of benefit to us in our lives. So there's a lot of definitions for mindfulness, and most people understand that mindfulness has an element of present moment awareness, right? This ability to kind of be in the moment, right? Recognizing that the mind, this thing, is often reaching and kind of going past and future. And a lot of times it's not in the center, right? It's kind of going, it's almost pendulating in a way, right? Between future and past, fear and hope right? Rehearsing, rehashing, right? There's a lot of ways that the mind can kind of start to grab for things outside of the moment. So mindfulness is really that. It's just like, how do we begin to start paying more attention to what's happening currently in each moment, right? And what I mean by that is paying attention to things like sensations in the body, starting to pay attention to things to more like thought patterns in the body, right? Starting to pay attention to things like emotional states in the body, right? This starts to give us an ability to inhabit the body in a more full way. So there's a beautiful definition I like to read. It's by a teacher in the Bay Area. His name's James Baraz. And I'm going to read this for you. Mindfulness is simply being aware of what is happening right now without wishing it were different. It's enjoying the pleasant without holding on when it changes, which it will. And it's all about being with the unpleasant without fearing it will always be this way, which it won't. So there's a real beauty in that statement, right? Because he names these two things, right? There's a being with the pleasant without holding on when it changes, because we know it will. Everything changes, right? We know this. And then being with the unpleasant, the difficult times, without fearing that it's always going to be this way, right? We know that change is always imminent, right? And mindfulness helps us ride those waves of change. There's another piece of mindfulness that's important to kind of mention here, and it's acceptance. So there's another layer, right? So the first layer is kind of this idea of presence, the self-awareness, moment-to-moment kind of awareness of what's happening. And there's another piece where we start to learn how to accept what's happening. And when I say that, I don't necessarily mean that we have to like what's happening, right? And that's an important piece, I think, for people in specifically in recovery, right? If we look at that one piece, can we accept things even if we don't like them? As a therapist, I often talk about the therapeutic continuum. So there's this continuum. The first step on the continuum is awareness. If we're unaware of a problem, if we're unaware of a pattern or a belief or something that we do, a behavior, how do we know how to fix it, how to change it? So the first step is actually becoming aware of what we're holding, right? So many people in recovery, they start, once they get clean, they start to become very aware, right? Maybe of the damage they've done to themselves or their families, right? Maybe of some of the hurt they've caused. Then we have to accept. It's just like, yeah, I've done this. I've done things, or maybe I've experienced things, or things are happening to me that I may not be happy with or like, but I can accept that. There's an openness, right? Only from those two places, from awareness and acceptance, can we institute change in our lives. If we don't accept what is, and if we're unaware of what is, how would we have that vantage point to be able to change something? Right? So these two pieces, awareness and acceptance, are the first two stops on a therapeutic continuum when we want to institute change in our lives. Mhm. And another piece about the acceptance, it's trying to cultivate an attitude of like less judgment towards ourselves and towards others. And this is an important piece because someone who's, had some struggles with addiction in my past, there was often a way that I could be very, very self-loathing, right? I could be very self-judgmental. I would often extend compassion and kindness to others, but I would withhold that same compassion and kindness towards my own self, right? There was this idea that I could hate myself into becoming better, into changing, right? And it was a very, very difficult pattern to engage with, because it starts us on what's called a shame spiral, where we can start to spiral out and downward into this shame. And it's important to differentiate shame and guilt here, right? Because guilt is this feeling like we've done something bad, but we want to correct it or maybe change it. So there can sometimes be almost a positive or a motivating factor if we feel guilty about something, right? And we want to rectify the situation. But shame is this idea that we really have we turn it inward, right? So the difference is, like, guilt is, sometimes they say, guilt is, I did something bad. Shame is, I am bad. It's a belief, whereas guilt is from an action more. So it's important to kind of name that. Now, why is that important? Because if we bring it back to this idea of acceptance and non-judgment, right? Can we be less judgmental with our own selves? Can we be more kind to ourselves? Because what started to happen to me when I was struggling with addiction at one point, the shame would then make me use. And then I would feel shameful about using. And then what would happen? I'd use again. So I was on this loop. And what mindfulness started helping me with was to kind of disrupt that pattern, that loop, right? To recognize that I'm worthy of acceptance and love, and I'm worthy of non-judgment for my own self, just like others are. The brain is built to think, and we're thinking all the time. Sometimes in mindfulness, we call it the monkey mind, right? It's this mind that jumps from branch to branch, often beyond our control in many ways. And this stream of thoughts flowing through our minds can leave us very little time for inner quiet. Right? So our actions can be often undertaken with unawareness, right? We're kind of on that autopilot that people talk about. And for those in recovery, you could argue autopilot's dangerous to be on, right? Because when we're on autopilot, we're not engaged. And I know people who could be on autopilot aren't really, they're not embodied in their decision making often, right? So if I'm on autopilot and maybe I have a bad day, or I get into this shame spiral, I may find myself, whatever, reaching for drugs or reaching for a bottle and not even realize it. Like, realize the actions that I'm doing because I'm just kind of skating through on autopilot. So we can get caught up in thoughts and emotions, almost like a river in a way. And this is a metaphor we often use in mindfulness. It's really about sitting on the side of the river and watching the stream flow of what's happening in each moment. But sometimes we find ourselves in the water, right? In the river, and it's a raging river and it's taking us downstream, right? Maybe it's some difficult emotion that we're encountering. Anger, sadness, anxiety, whatever it may be, these emotions can take us, right? Mindfulness helps us pop back out of the water and sit on the banks and kind of watch the stream a bit more, right? We're able to kind of step out of the current. We call meditation practice a practice. Okay, and when we say mindfulness, there's several different ways that we can start to cultivate it. One would be formally, and the other would be informally. So formally, this is what we know as meditation practice. Okay, so when people decide that they want to become more mindful, they want to build self-awareness within themselves. I liken it often to like weight training or martial arts training or something like that, right? So if I wanted to get healthy or get big and strong, I would start going to the gym and pumping weights, right? Doing those push-ups. Or if I wanted to learn a martial art, I would start to study that martial art, right? So that if I ever needed to use it, I would be trained in order to use it. Mindfulness is the same. So every time that we practice formal mindfulness, and that means sitting down or standing or walking, but for a period of time where we're actually doing formal meditation, where we're closing our eyes, we're turning inward, and we're doing kind of what we just did in the very beginning, maybe using our breath or our body as grounding points, right? Because the body doesn't think, right? This is the vessel for our brains and for our hearts and for our emotions and everything that we do. So when we're able to drop out of this, right, which again, remember, it's going rehearsing, rehashing, past, future, right? What's going to happen, what was supposed to happen, right? Fear, anxiety about the future, sadness, regret, depression about the past, right? But when we start to kind of come back to the moment, this gives us it gives us what we need to make sure that we're engaging, you could say, each moment in right relationship, right? How are we showing up in each moment? So the formal practice, we're going to do some in about maybe 15 minutes or so. We're going to do some more formal practice. And I'm going to, again, talk you through everything. And there's ways that you can start to build a formal practice on your own. And for those of you who are interested in this, if you're kind of like, oh, this might be something that is helpful for me, or I read about this and I haven't really been able to like get it, it may be because you're not practicing formally. Right? Because what I find is the formal practice starts to inform the informal. So that brings us to the informal. The informal practice of mindfulness is simply starting to be more aware of where we're at when we're there and who we're with. So what would that look like? Well, informally, it could look like, let's say we wanted to informally be mindful and eat a meal. Well, that means starting to slow down, because a big part of mindfulness is starting to slow down, right? So often we're eating, not putting the spoon down, scarfing the food, right? Maybe watching something, right? My kid's tugging on my shirt, wants to play, and I'm in the middle of something. And it's like, it's what John Kabat-Zinn calls continuous partial awareness. It's as if our awareness is always split between 5, 6, 10 different things. Right. So mindful eating would look like maybe putting the spoon down between bites, right? Making sure the food's chewed completely, really like being with the flavor and savoring the taste. It could be as simple as washing a dish and feeling the water go over my hands, the soapy water, like really being in the moment as much as we possibly can. Now, those of you who do maybe sports or art or music or something creative like that, we know what it's like to be in the zone, right? When we feel like we're in that flow. This is mindfulness. So this is a way that we can start to promote that, because you could argue, who doesn't want to be in the flow, right? I mean, if we could be more in the flow every day, why not? It can help reduce stress in our lives. And for those of us who are in recovery, stress can be a major trigger point, right? Stress and anxiety. So any tools that we can start to build that's going to mitigate the stress and anxiety in ourselves, you could argue it would be imperative for us to do so, especially in these times, right? With the virus on us, all of the shifts that have happened in the last year or so for us, it's been an extremely stressful time for everyone, right? Anxiety, we're going to start experiencing, I would say, substantial mental health issues in the country over the coming years because of the last few years, right? So there's this, I'm saying that not to like alarm people, but it's like, again, it is, can we accept what is? This is what's in front of us, right? We don't want to be like this, right? We want to know what's happening and be more engaged. There's a beautiful William James quote. They live in a state of ceaseless frenzy, thinking they should be doing something more than they are doing in the moment, right? So there's this idea that we always need to be on to the next, right? Or there's this idea that once I get to this point, everything's going to be fine. So for example, a few years ago, I got a master's degree, right? And before that, I got my bachelor's. And I remember kind of having my eye always on the horizon, right? Once I get the degree, the bachelor's degree, I'm going to be good. I'll be making better money, and then I'm going to be set. And then I got that, and it was like, cool, but I actually need to get the master's degree. But once I get that, we're good. So 4 more years go. It's like, actually got to get the license too. It's just going to be another few years. But once I get that, then we're good. So what starts to happen? I turned 50. And 50 years went by where it's like, what have I been waiting for? I'm waiting for the next moment to come, because the next moment's going to be better than this one. And to me, that's problematic, because then 50 years go by and it's like, when am I going to arrive? Mindfulness gives us the permission to arrive now and here in this moment, not in one that's going to come in the future. And again, I'm not saying this, don't hope, don't plan, don't dream, right? Don't think of the future. That's not what this is about, right? We got to hold that with reason. It's really about how much time are we spending with our eye that on the time that everything's going to be better, everything's going to be set. So how does this start to help us being more aware, being more mindful? It can help us to feel better, especially if we're struggling with difficult emotions, maybe fluctuations in mood, maybe physical pain or chronic pain is another area where mindfulness can start to help us. This idea that when we resist something, it often sticks. Right? So a lot of the practice for me in mindfulness is about, what can I let go of right now? Right? What am I trying to hold on to too tightly or too much? Right? It was supposed to be this way, not that way. Right? The bus was supposed to be here at 10 o'clock, not 10:15. Right? The meeting was supposed to start. It's accept what is and be with what is. So it can help us to start being more present and engaged in everyday life, rather than being lost in thoughts, past, future, like we mentioned. We start to notice more direct experiences of sensations, emotions, and thoughts. I want to give you guys a quick acronym, SCTA, and it has the 3 of the things I've already talked about, but it's a good way to remember it. SCTA, or SITA. We have sensations. Then we have E for emotions. And then we have T for thoughts. Now, let me pause there. The SET is really what we want to pay attention to when we're practicing mindfulness, right? So, for example, the first sit that we did, you may recall, what did I orient you guys to first? It was the body, right? So it's like, what are you noticing? It was sensations, right? It's like sensation of touch, maybe sound in the room, the sound of my voice, right? That's where we start. We move to emotions. We can start to understand, okay, am I feeling something? How am I feeling? What am I noticing? And then what thoughts am I or am I starting to notice coming up that are attached to that emotion? The A is action. So the kind of theory here goes, the more we start to be engaged or pay attention to the SET, the more the A is going to be lining up with what we want. Right? It's when we're kind of unaware of the sensations, emotions, and thoughts, I've found in my life that my actions are sometimes regrettable, right? Or sometimes something that I'm not, it's not congruent, or I'm not aligned with what I did or what I said, right? Whereas when I am paying more attention to sensations, emotions, and thoughts, my actions are more aligned. One thing I want to say about the sensations piece that is important: sensations can give us a clue to what emotions are arising in the body. So I'll paint a picture. Let's say I'm driving down the road on the highway. I got my kids in the back, and somebody cuts me off in traffic, right? I slam the brakes on, and I keep going. I'm okay. I'm shook up, right? I can start to feel sensations. Hands shaking, palms are sweaty, my jaw starts tightening, right? I can feel myself maybe breathing more shallow from the chest, right? These are all physical sensations that are very important for me to track. For me, what that means is the check engine light is on for me, right? Because if I know if I start breathing from here, and my hands start shaking, something's happening, right? I don't feel safe. Maybe I feel like something is happening, like there's a danger, right? There's anxiety growing, right? Again, when I start to track the sensations, emotions, and thoughts, maybe I'm not going to roll my window down and give the guy the finger and start yelling at him or whatever, right? I'm able to just be like, okay, let me go back. I'm safe. I'm okay. Let me keep moving. So Sita. Let's look a little bit on like how this supports recovery. So many in recovery are, you could say, almost like former escape artists of trying to escape from what? Anything that doesn't feel good, anything that's uncomfortable, any type of like pain, I'm out because I've got to go to, right? I've got something that I can lean on that's going to help me, not in a healthy way, unfortunately, but help me numb that discomfort that I'm feeling. We try to avoid stress. We try to avoid anxiety. We try to avoid sadness. Anything that may feel slightly uncomfortable, we start to have a very, very low tolerance for. And what mindfulness practice starts to do is it gives us more resilience in when those times are difficult, that we can kind of hang in there with the difficulty. We can hang in there when there may be discomfort, and we don't immediately have to run to find a way out, if that makes sense. We start to learn how to cope with reality exactly how it is, not how we wanted it to be, right? Now, not how we wished it would be, but how it actually is. I want to offer a few metaphors first before we get into another sit. There's another word I like to use sometimes when I describe being in a state of presence or self-awareness, and it's choicefulness, right? It's the ability to be in choice. One thing I've found just as a therapist, through work with people with addictions, and then some of my own experiences, is that I found people who are often in addiction feel like they're not in choice, right? I can remember many times reaching for something that I knew I didn't want to be doing it. I knew, like it was just something like, ugh, but I didn't have a choice. So I like to use this word choicefulness, because when we can start slowing down, when we start slowing down our mental processes, our sensations, our thoughts, it gives me an ability to be more in choice with what I'm doing in that moment. So another metaphor, most people, everybody's got a smartphone these days, and often we'll get calls. Sometimes you get a call and you're like, yeah, I don't want to talk to that person right now, right? It's like, oh, I owe that person money or whatever it is, right? It's like, I don't want to talk to that person. So what do? We screen the call. It's like, I'm going to screen this call. Who is it? Nah, later, I'll call him. Why can't we screen emotions and thoughts the same way? So this is a nice way to look at mindfulness, is a different lens. It's about screening our actions, screening our thoughts. It's like, what is actually happening up here right now? Am I aware of what I'm thinking? Right? There's a meta awareness. It's awareness of awareness, right? It's like we have to step back to be able to look at the river, right? Going back to that one metaphor of the river moving, right? We're outside of it, looking at it, right? So this gives us an ability to screen. It's like, what is the emotion arising right now? And what is going to be my response to it? What is my reaction, right, to this thing that's happening to me? The final one I want to just mention is this concept of urge surfing. I always liked this. And this is a great concept for those in recovery. Maybe people know it here. You know, when we experience a strong emotion and an urge to act, right, or an urge to get some relief from that strong emotion, maybe it's like yell or scream when we're angry, or reach for something, a drug or something to kind of numb that feeling. These urges, we know, can be often destructive or harmful to ourselves and to those we love, those around us. But the urge, it acts like a wave, right? So it builds an intensity and then it tapers off. So anyone who's sat through an urge, you know, if there's people who are in recovery on the call, anyone who's like worked themselves or talked themselves or had someone else talk themselves through an urge to use, know that it comes and it goes, right? It's got a shelf life to it, right? And I'm not saying there won't be another one, but as we know, we try to live in the moment, even taking from 12-step recovery, right? It's like one day at a time. This is mindfulness. And it's the same thing. I can't stay clean for the rest of my life, but for a breath, for a moment, for this urge that I have right now that I know is going to maybe go down in a few minutes or whatever, I can ride this. I can ride this one. So we can start to ride these urges until they subside. It's another nice metaphor that I like, and I think it's particularly relevant for this community today. So I've talked a lot, and I would love to. It's easy to talk about mindfulness and not do it. So I want to shut my mouth and actually do some practice with y'all. So I will be guiding you. So I'm not going to shut it completely, but I'm not going to keep talking about it. I would like to do some more practice. So again, a few, you know, for those of you again who are new on the call or maybe joined the first time, you don't have to make it weird. I guess that's what I'm saying. This is all we're doing is trying to close our eyes and just be for a little while. It's less about doing and more about being, if that makes sense. There's not a lot to do, but there's a lot to track. Does that make sense? There's a lot to pay attention to. There's a lot to be curious about. So this is what we want to lean into when we practice. So again, formally, you know, when we practice, I would invite people to sit in a chair if that's comfortable for them. You don't have to be in some strange pretzel-like position. You're not going to get extra points, you know, folding your legs over and that kind of thing. And again, the eyes, I find it's helpful to close them. You don't have to. If you don't feel comfortable closing your eyes, you totally don't have to close them. Just pick a point in front of you and just kind of lower your gaze and focus on it. And then make sure that you're sitting in a way that's dignified, upright, but not uptight. Spine should be straight. And right now we'll do about maybe 10, 12 minutes or so. And then we'll pause and then we'll do some Q&A for the rest of the remainder of the session. So let's get started. So allowing the eyes to close, again, if you're comfortable doing that. Just a couple breaths, just start with that. Nice deep ones from the belly. Maybe setting a just brief intention to just be as present as you can for these few minutes that we're going to practice together. And then just begin to bring some gentle attention just to the sound of my voice and any other sounds that you may be picking up. Maybe it's in the room you're in, maybe you hear a car drive by. It may be ambient sounds from outside of the room. Whatever it may be, just start to notice. You don't wish it were different. Don't fall into the story about what the sound is. Just simply notice it. Now, sound's a nice place to start because we don't really have to do much, right? We just simply receive sounds, right? We don't have to actually intentionally hear, right? We can all just kind of receive sounds as they come to us. And I'm wondering if we can start to receive the body in that same way. So just begin to notice the body, starting with maybe the back being supported, the feet on the floor, the seat underneath you. Again, making sure the face is soft. So let the face just kind of slide off. Make sure the tongue's off the roof of the mouth. The eyebrows relax, the jaw, shoulders are dangling off the neck. They're not bunched up. Belly is soft. Let the belly hang. This is the first step of mindfulness, is just simply relaxing, right? Relaxing the body, relaxing into the moment. And you may notice like a layer deeper, right? The skin temperature, clothing, constriction of clothing, warmth, coolness. Maybe other sensations internally. Maybe there's some pain in the body. Maybe there's discomfort in the body, hunger. If you encounter something that has some discomfort, see if you can just notice it and not, again, fall into the story about how it's supposed to be different. Can we just meet the moment and meet what is, even if it's uncomfortable? And like we did before, we're all sitting still, but the invitation now is to start to contact the breath. So start to bring attention to the breath. Traditionally in this practice, there's a few places that people suggest to do that. And the first is the tip of the nose. So noticing the flow of air, just simply going in and going out. You may experience a coolness on the inside of your nose and nostrils when you inhale, or a warmth on your upper lip when you exhale. That would be the first spot that you can kind of rest attention on. The other area that's common is the area of the belly and rib cage, because it's rising and falling. It's contracting and expanding, contracting. So the invitation is whichever one of those places feels the easiest or the friendliest, right, the most alive, shine your spotlight of attention on that spot. So think of your attention as a spotlight that you can zoom in on the tip of the nose, or you can zoom in on the belly and the rib cage. And begin to just experience the physical sensations of the breath. Just breathing in and breathing out. Rising, falling. If you find it helpful, you can say silently in on the in-breath and out on the out-breath. It gives the mind another thing to kind of hold on to as we breathe. If you're anything like me, your mind's probably drifted off multiple times already. Likes, dislikes, wants, hopes, dreams, fears, failures, woulda, shoulda, coulda. You didn't do anything wrong by thinking. That's what the mind does. And it's not our job to stop thoughts. That's a tall order. But what is our job right now is when we catch ourselves kind of drifting, right, into one place or the other, past or present, or past or future, the invitation is to notice it and to gently redirect our attention back to the breath, remembering that the breath is like an anchor into this moment. So it anchors us. And we always have that anchor. That anchor is going to be there. In good times and bad and difficulties, through successes. But that anchor of the breath, of the body, it's with us through it all. So this is how we start to leverage the breath and the body to work for us, to work for our minds, our hearts. So just keep inviting yourself back with kindness, with some compassion. We don't invite ourselves back with a backhand, right? Nice work, you did it again, you drifted off. You can't even do this right. Right? That's not what we want. Just bring yourself back gently. Just breathing in and breathing out. Okay, before we finish up, I want to offer one other technique. It's a breathing technique. And it's called 3-4-5. And it's very simple. So what we're going to do is we're going to take an inhalation for the count of 3. We're going to hold our breath for the count of 4. And then we're going to exhale for the count of 5. And we're going to do it 3 times. And this can help us when we're in a state of anxiety, right, or difficulty. It's another way to ground ourselves. So get ready to take a deep breath right now. 1, 2, 3, and then hold it. 3, 4, and then exhale longer, slow. 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Again, inhale, nice and deep. 2, 3, and then hold it. 2, 3, 4, and then exhaling. 1, slow. 2, 3, 4, 5. Good. Last one, nice and big. 2, 3, hold it. 3, and then letting it all out, nice and slow. And now start to just allow your breath to come back to a normal pace for a moment or two, checking back in with the body. You're feeling those feet on the floor, feeling that belly soft, feeling the face soft. Wiggle your toes a little bit as you're blinking your eyes back open, coming out of the meditation, starting to bring some visual attention to the room that you're in. So just orienting back into the room and then back into this virtual space we find ourselves in. So thank you all for going on that ride with me right now. Before I open it up for Q&A, I just want to mention one thing about that 3-4-5 meditation. There's science behind this. When we elongate the exhalation, so we have a longer exhalation than our inhalation, it activates the parasympathetic nervous system. This is part of our autonomic nervous system, which is known often as the rest and recover or rest and digest part of our nervous system. So this 3-4-5, we teach it at Mind Body Awareness Project. Almost it's like an emergency meditation in a way. So if there's ever a time where you're really feeling like, there's stress starting to kind of overtake you, this 3-4-5 meditation can really help. It's not going to solve life's problems. I can't promise you that, but it may bump you back down into an area where you're a little less stressed out, right? So it could give you a leg up on anxiety or stress. So it's a very, very nice meditation. Often I'll do it at night before I go to sleep. It's a wonderful way to just kind of tell the body it's time to relax a bit. So with that, I want to pause And Kali, would it be okay if we open it up to for some Q&A? Does that sound all right?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. That was wonderful. I feel so much
Great.
more relaxed right now. So in the past, there's a couple ways you can kind of raise your hand or let us know you have a question. You can do whatever is easier for you. Sometimes people post Q or question or type their question in the chat if they prefer not to talk. You can raise your hand in the Zoom chat, your virtual hand, by going to participants, and then there should be a raise hand option, or you can literally raise your hand on your screen, and Micah or I will see you and call on you. So definitely open.
Hello?
Hi. Did someone want to start? Does someone have a question? Please. Is it Russell?
Yes, Russell.
How are you? Welcome.
Good, thank you, and thank you for this. So about the 3-4-5, when I was doing that, I'm very good with the 3 and very good with the 5, but holding just didn't feel comfortable.
It didn't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you said, you know, taking longer to exhale. I mean, is the holding something that's really?
It's, you know, sometimes they teach this as, it's also known as box breathing. I don't know if anyone's ever heard that term. Sometimes they teach it as also another type of meditation where basically you inhale, hold, exhale, hold, inhale, hold, exhale, hold. Does that make sense? So, but those are all at the same, it would be like 3, 3, 3, 3, right? Known as box breathing. This is a little bit different. The holding isn't as important as the lengthening of the exhale. So what I would suggest for you is see if you can hold it for 1 second or 2 seconds, right? So maybe do 3, 2, 5 or something like that, right? The point is, what I've found with the box breathing, or especially like elongating the exhalation, if I start to practice it more, not just over the course of weeks or months, but even in one session. So sometimes the first one, it feels a little hard to do, but if I do it like 2, 3, 4 for a few minutes, 3, 4, 5 for a few minutes, sometimes I've found that the exhalations can go up to 7, 8, 9, because my breath really starts slowing down, right? But this takes time and practice. This is when I do it at night. It's very, because it really starts to I start to nod off sometimes. You know, when I do it, it's helpful to fall asleep. So I hope that's helpful, Russell.
Yeah, I'll give the shorter. I'll you know, give up the hold, but I'll shorten the hold.
Yeah. That's great. Good. Thank you. What else do we got?
Hey, man.
Hi.
Pete. I just want to say thanks. I don't have a question or this.
Right on. Thank you, Pete. It's nice to see you. Grateful it was beneficial. What else?
It was for sure. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Nobody else? Come on, y'all. You got me for 9 more minutes if you want. Please. Jessica.
I have a question. Oh, go ahead. Do it if somebody else.
Okay, we'll do Jessica first and then Angela. Is that okay? Okay, great.
So,
hi, Jessica.
Hi.
How are you
Thanks
doing?
for being here.
Sure.
I really appreciated it.
Sure.
And so I recently started meditating, but I find myself getting physically squirrely around 5 minutes. You know, when you're starting out, flexing that muscle, if you will. So what do you recommend to kind of bring yourself back when you start to get physically squirrely when you're starting out?
Yeah. Can I ask you a question? When you say physical, where do you start to notice the squirreliness starting? And it's okay if you don't know.
I think I find myself wanting to, like, I hate to admit this, but reach for my phone.
Yeah.
Or like, you know,
do something else.
I do my meditation while I'm laying down. So I don't know if that has something to do with it.
I don't know specifically that. squirreliness is part of it, right? The first thought I had when you said there's a reason I asked you, like, where do you start to notice it? Because the first thought I had was use the squirreliness as the point of focus, right? So what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is about starting to look at what is happening in the moment, right? What I'm hearing you say is I'm getting squirrely and I'm pulling out of the moment because I'm squirrely. Right. But I think the invitation at that point would be actually to lean in a little bit more and be like, let me get curious about the squirreliness. Where do I notice it? That's why I asked, like, is it in my feet? Do I feel like my feet got to move? Is it I have to reach for my phone? Is it more of a mental thing? Is it a physical thing? Do I feel like I'm missing out on something? Keep in mind, like at this time, especially, we're all overstimulated with screens, right? And constant, gotta be in the know. I gotta know everything that's happening all the time. What happens if I miss out, right? The first thing we see, this. The last thing we see, this. Every day. So what is that doing to our ability to sit still? So I guess the invitation for you, Jessica, would be to start to investigate that a bit more. Right? Wherever, here's a nice adage I can leave you with. Wherever there's tension, put attention. Wherever there's tension, that means that there's something there to be worked with, to work through, right? I hope that helps a bit.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jessica. Yeah. Angela, did you have a question or something?
Yes, I wanted
Yeah.
to know what the acronym was again so I could write that
Oh,
down.
sure. Yeah, I'm happy to. It's SETA. So SETA. And
Okay.
again, it's sensations, emotions, thoughts. Those three are packaged together, kind of, right? We want to start
Okay.
paying more attention to those three things. Sensations, like feeling squirrely. Thoughts, like I got to reach for my phone, right? Maybe emotions, like I'm anxious, I'm sad, whatever is coming up in that moment, right? The A is action. So this idea, we can start to pay more attention to the SCT, and then the actions will be more aligned. They'll be more congruent with who we are, what we want in life.
Okay. And I really like what you said about the choicefulness. I find myself not having putting myself in a situation where I feel that I don't have a choice in the matter. It's, I'm very black and white thinking, there's no gray area, which I'm working on. And I like that you said that we have to be in choice, like have the choice and to choose to be in meditation, to be mindful. And it's I very much agree on the screen time thing. I wake up with the screen, I go to bed with the screen, and in between, even if I try to meditate, I do find myself veering back to my screen. And I'm a type of person that has been doing meditation, but and for my anxieties mainly, and I love it, but I find myself not being in choice, not being choicefulness about it, like saying, okay, I'm going to choose to do this right here, right now, forget everything else, set the mood, which I've done before, but here lately, it's just, I'm veering off into like social media, into my programs, which is good, but I find myself veering off in those places where I should just be, like you say, in the present, being mindful, and choosing to be in that space, that headspace. And I just like that because now I could say, you can choose to be over here distracted, or you can choose to be right here present. And that's the thing I'm mostly working on, is being in the moment, the present moment, because all that other stuff's going to be there regardless. But meditation is something and I know it's a self-care, self-love thing. It's something that I need to practice to stay in the moment, because I don't feel I have a choice in the matter. I feel like I'm always taking like 3 different calls at the same time, and I'm just putting myself in that chaos when I could just choose to say no, complete sentence, period.
Yep. You're onto
So
something
I
big.
love that you said that. I mean, I'm writing these notes down and just going with the flow with this because I love meditation, but it's just making that choice to practice it each and every day, you know?
Yeah, I hear it. I hear it. I'm glad it was helpful. And what you're kind of reflecting back to me, you got it spot on, right? It's
Thank
like,
you. Thank
so
you.
it's like, even like the this idea of reaching for this. Are we even aware that we reached for it and opened it? Half the time I'm not. I'm just like on it. I'm like, how did what?
Yeah.
How did that happen? I just like, I don't want to be on Facebook again right now. I don't need to check the news 25 times a day,
Which
right?
is the choicefulness is really helpful because I have a choice to put the phone down. I've even gotten to the point where I know I'm exaggerating, but to the point where I almost want to just hide my phone, you know, for the day and just be in meditation. You know, there's no such thing as just doing enough meditation, you know, 15, 20 minutes, you know, 45, I don't care how long, but that phone really gets me. And with being in quarantine, it's just like an extension of the outside world,
Yes,
what's
it is.
going on,
It's very
you know?
complex right
So,
now. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
thank you. You really made a lot of sense and I
Mm.
appreciate that. Thank
Thank
you.
you, Angela. I appreciate the feedback. Yeah. Thank you. Kali, should I turn it back over to you? We got about a minute left or so.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for your questions. And thank you so much, Micah. This was lovely. I really
Pleasure.
enjoyed it.
It's
And
a
if
pleasure.
anyone would like, we did record. So if anyone would like the recording, you can type your email in the chat if you didn't pre-register. Everyone who pre-registered, I have your emails and I'll send you a follow-up with the recording on our YouTube. But thank you again. Micah, do you want to tell us where we can find you on
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
project and whatnot?
So yeah, I have my personal website is just Micah Anderson Therapy. So .com. So it's MICAH Anderson Therapy.com. And the organization that I run, I'm a clinical director at, is called the Mind Body Awareness Project. And we again work with at-risk communities here in the Bay Area in California. So thank you for that, Kali. And it's really been an honor and pleasure. Thank you for all the engagement. And I hope this was beneficial for the community here. It's great to be involved. So thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. It was so helpful. And I'll email you all. And I hope everyone has a great evening. And we'll see you all again soon. For next month, we're going to do yoga for
Ooh, nice.
Self-Love February.
Cool. Okay, friends. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.
Thank you.